Ohio, not too far away from where this happened. And a lot of people that I know in my personal life are freaking out over this train crash, totally unnecessarily. And I just want to talk about how it is a big deal. The train crashing and leaching chemicals into the environment is a big deal, right? But people really underestimate the size of the world, and they really underestimate, or they really overestimate the size of humanity, right? So this happened in East Palestine, Ohio, which is not a very big town. It's right on the border of Ohio and right on the border of Ohio and Pennsylvania. Pushing down towards West Virginia, and it it is not a very big town, but the world is very large, and a couple of train cars, I think it was 50, were damaged, but not all of them were leaking, and not all of them had hazardous chemicals in them. So I think it's probably more like maybe 20. The number's hard to pin down. I've been trying to find it, but if I had to guess, I'd say it's probably like 20 to 25 tanker cars were leaking and or needed burned off. That's not that much relative to the size of the environment, right? Because all chemicals, regardless of whether they're natural chemicals or whether they're um, man-made chemicals, or whether they have a certain amount of toxicity or they're completely benign, right? They all have a dosage limit, a parts per million in the environment where they become dangerous, right? This is true for chemicals that are benign. I mean, technically, water is a chemical, and once you go over a certain parts per million of water in your lungs, you drown. So, like, there's a lethal dose of water, right? Um, and each chemical and each substance has a lethal dose that differs based off of what it does. Now, hazardous chemicals oftentimes will have a lethal dose from the chemical reactions that it produces in your body, as opposed to water that just displaces the oxygen that your lungs need to breathe, and as such, you drown, right? But still, there is a lethal dose of water, right? From a physical standpoint, if it's too much water in your lungs and you can't get enough oxygen, you will die. So that is the lethal dose of water. And so you have to ask yourself, when these situations happen, what is the parts per million dosage where a chemical becomes dangerous? Because chemicals don't always have a parts per million dosage where they become dangerous, that you would ever encounter in real life, right? Because chemicals have to be concentrated to reach that limit. And it's perfectly reasonable to assume, based off of what happened here, that given the chemicals that were on board, which we'll talk about which ones they were here in a second, um, there's no acute risk of death or disease from anything that happened with these chemicals. But we're going to start off by updating on the story as of what it is now. So we'll read a BBC article here right quick. It says officials have provided some details about the Norfolk Southern train that derailed on the 3rd of February on its way to Pennsylvania. The train hauled about 150 freight carriages, 50 of which were hit by the crash. Mr. DeWine, Governor DeWine, the governor of Ohio, said at a press conference on Tuesday about 10 of them carried potentially toxic materials. Right. So, like I said, uh, 10 train cars had potentially toxic materials, but more tankers probably had other stuff on board that's not good for the environment. Maybe some oil, maybe some other stuff. So figured 20, 25 train cars, right? An exact cause for the derailment has not yet been determined by the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, but they said it may have been related to a mechanical issue on one of the car axles. Its cars were carrying, among other substances, vinyl chloride, a colorless hazardous gas that is used to make PVC, plastic, and vinyl products. Vinyl chloride is also a known carcinogen. Acute exposure to the chemical is linked to dizziness, drowsiness, and headaches, whereas prolonged exposure can cause liver damage and a rare form of liver cancer. Okay, so let's talk about vinyl chloride, right? I went real deep, real deep on the effects of vinyl chloride on the human body, right? And it's acute toxicity. The danger now to you being exposed to it is very low, right? It doesn't do a whole lot in your body. It mostly acts as an anesthetic, right? So it can make you sleepy, it can make you drowsy, it can make you pass out, just like any other anesthesia drug that you may use. Working on the What are your thoughts on the Michigan shooting? The fuck is wrong with you, bro? What I don't what do you mean? And also I'm getting to the Michigan shooting here in a minute. Thanks for joining again though. So it can make you sleepy if you inhale a certain dosage of it, right? But its main effects its main danger is long term exposure, like exposure over. I didn't say it was good. I'm not saying stuff like this is good. I'm saying it's something that people are freaking out about, right? And there's not much of a reason to freak out about it. Like, you still need to be conscious of it. You still need to be aware, which is exactly what the EPA and everybody dealing with the cleanup is telling you, but there isn't an acute danger to it, to humans, right? So, um, so vinyl chloride can make you sleepy, it can make you drowsy, but it's not going to cause any like acute danger to you unless you have stupid high doses, which is basically you have to basically drink the liquefied version of this chemical, which is not going to happen because it's a gas at room temperature. All right. What caused the train crash? Right now they think it was a broken axle shaft on one of the train cars. So they think one train car derailed from a broken axle shaft, which, because all the train cars are connected, makes a bunch of them crash, right? But so now the main danger to the environment from vinyl chloride is it's heavier than air. So if it gets out into the environment, it will hang in a cloud on the ground, right? And that hanging cloud on the ground will displace oxygen in the environment because it's heavier than air. And any animal or plants that comes into contact with it, right, could potentially suffocate from lack of oxygen. So, and also vinyl chloride is hecka flammable. That stuff will catch fire very easily, right? So that's why they decided to do a controlled burn of the vinyl chloride. What's up, Chris? How's it going? Jump into chat here and don't yawn at me. Throw some jokes out. But it's hecka flammable, which is why they decided to burn it off, right? Because it's pressurized in these train cars. If they do decide to, if something happens and the vinyl chloride does catch fire, what you basically have is a bomb sitting in the middle of a town, right? So bombs are worse. We've all seen the video of what happened. Toxic fucking gas people are talking about, and the water getting polluted. Maybe we're getting to that. That's the next part I'm about to talk about, right? So when you burn vinyl chloride, right, it has combustion properties that it breaks down into, most of which are hydrochloric acid and carbon dioxide. The black smoke that you see coming out of it is because all substances that burn. Thank you for the follow. What does this affect, bro? Seriously, it doesn't affect much. That's the point, right? It doesn't do much for the environment. But the black smoke that you saw comes from the incomplete combustion, right? There isn't enough concentration of oxygen in the air to completely burn the vinyl chloride. So anything that burns incompletely will have like nitrous oxide emissions and stuff that will turn the smoke very black. This is what happens when like cars don't run properly, right? You get that black smoke coming out of the back of it. That's from incomplete combustion. Pretty much works that way for everything. Um, so this plume of smoke looks worse than it actually is, because the concentration of hydrochloric acid is not good. Hydrochloric acid will do some nasty things to you in pretty high doses, but it has to be like thousands of parts per million, and the cloud will very quickly Red orange toxic gas, bro. I saw on the Tim Pool show. I think. Yeah, you're gonna see funny. You're gonna see colors in the gas, right? Most colors, most concentrated burning gases will have some trace elements that will glow certain colors, right? They may reflect light in a certain way depending on how it's burning. The orange gas is not, or the slightly orange colored gas is not necessarily indicative of it having a toxic chemical in it. It can just be the way vinyl chloride burns. Just like just like salt, when you burn certain salts, they'll burn like bright green, right? There's nothing wrong with it. It wasn't black. Hold on. Pull up a picture here. So this picture here that I just pulled up, it wasn't black. We're thinking of different cases. If you're looking, if what you saw was this picture here on Tim Pool, was this the one that you saw? Whoops, wrong button. This here, that orange in that this orange in that burn, right? That's just flame. That's all that is just flames burning. It's up here. No, I'll find it. Yes, post it if you could, please. It's up here. It's this here. This is the decay products of it burning, right? And that's just black soot. That's mostly what that is black soot. But so the main decay products are carbon dioxide and hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid is not good, but the concentration you get out of it is not that high. And the parts per million you need for hydrochloric acid to be dangerous is almost like 1,600 parts per million, which would this burn here would very quickly fall below that. So you want to be careful, right? That's the important thing. If it is raining outside, don't necessarily go stand in the rain when they're burning something that can produce hydrochloric acid, right? But the hydrochloric acid will dissipate into the environment. Plus, it being an acid means that it reacts pretty readily with the environment. So not only will it dissipate, but the longer it's in the air, the more and more of the acid will get used up, and it'll react with things, and it'll fall later as harmless stuff, right? You deactivate the acid the more it has time to react with things. So the point is follow what the EPA is saying about it. If they say don't drink the water, which is what they're saying right now, out of an abundance of caution, don't drink the water. Please drink bottled water. You should do that, right? You should constantly be keeping track of what the EPA says the water quality in the area is. So far, they say it's fine, but you also don't want to, but you also don't want to be, overly liberal with it. Thank you for the link. 2 hours. All right. Well, I'll switch back over to chatting here. I'll let it play for a bit and see if I can find the spot. Oh, 4:35. Thank you. Thank you very much. I will move it to that spot. All right. Okay, so I want to look something up real quick because right off the bat, that that video is not descriptive. So let's go. Okay, so there's the train tracks. Come on. Okay, so then we want to. All right, East Palestine. Where's the train line? Okay, the train line runs through it. So I want to know where that video was taken from because he was on an Leak Oil Company temporarily closed. He must have been on over here on Constitution Boulevard. Okay, so it's possible he could have seen that smoke. Possible he could have seen that smoke from the road. Because I think because all the pictures I've seen of the train crash, it didn't happen near a street, so that smoke wouldn't be drifting at ground level like that. Um, it would have gone up higher into the atmosphere. But if it's somewhere over here, it's possible they would have done it. He could have seen it. So I can't say for a fact that video didn't come from that site, right? But regardless, like I said, the orange smoke, sometimes you'll get that when you burn things and you get incomplete combustion. You'll just have sort of like a different mixing of elements as you burn stuff because I think it killed some lady's full barn of chicken. Yeah, yeah, that's stuff. Yeah, if the thing is right next to where it happened, right? When the chemicals were still leaking into the ground, you're going to have a pretty high concentration of potentially hazardous chemicals, right, in the ground. And your chickens are running around. They don't know any better. They'll drink out of puddles. They'll peck at the ground, and they might get a lethal dose of whatever it is that they got, right? But people don't have a habit. Well, they're yeah. If that getting the drinking water would kill everybody, it probably wouldn't kill everybody because the dosage would be super high that you would need to have people like drop over dead, right? And also the EPA is checking the water quality, and out of abundance of caution, they're telling people not to drink the water just in case they do find elevated levels of it in the water supply. And so far, the EPA has only found trace amounts of these chemicals in the water, which have a pretty high parts per million acute dosage rating. And vinyl chloride does almost nothing if you ingest it, if you drink it, if you eat it. Right? Its main problem. That scary, bro. Where it come from? You mean the chemicals? Well, the chemicals are used to make PVC. It's one of the main components of PVC pipes. So it's just a precursor to PVC pipes. But yeah, so the parts per million has to be pretty high, and vinyl chloride, which is the main chemical that's been leaking out, doesn't have it doesn't have an effect if you ingest it, right? It's just if you breathe it as a gas, which is part of the reason why they burned it, right? Because it exists as a gas at room temperature and it's heavier than air. So if the tankers were to leak vinyl chloride into the environment, it would just sort of hang on the ground, and it's very flammable. You think China did it? No. Anytime something like this happens, it's incompetence of some kind, right? That's what this is going to be. Some maintenance guy didn't do his job, or the maintenance team is underpaid or underfunded, or the owners of the company weren't doing the stuff that they were supposed to do. It's going to be one of those things, right? It's never China. The only thing China's doing right now, you think they're trying to start war with us? No, China. I would be really surprised if China was trying to start war with the United States. China and the United States are political adversaries, but they are also the most dependent countries upon each other of any countries in the world. Right? China is our largest trading partner outside of Canada. And they produce so many of the like tangible goods that we use in this country. And as a result of that, America has a very large vested interest in China continuing to produce those things. And China has a very large vested interest in America continuing to buy those things, because that's how both countries' economy is structured at the moment. So the two countries going to war would be dumb for both sides. So I think China is not trying to push for war. I think they're just doing what China does. China has a really bad habit as a country of letting civilian
letting civilian companies do things that they otherwise probably shouldn't do, because whatever they're doing might have a military application, and then not telling the rest of the world about it. You know, China has a bad habit of doing that. They did it with their current rocket, right? Their current space rocket has an uncontrolled descent back to the Earth. Every other rocket from every other country will burn itself up over a spot on the Earth, right? It's a pre-planned, predetermined spot. China's rocket does not have that capability. Do you think we're all going to die? I mean, eventually, but not all at the same time. But China's rocket does not have the ability to control its descent, so it will land wherever it lands from the trajectory. It's basically a ballistic missile at that point. I mean, this year, bro. No, we're not going to die this year. No, there's nothing happening now that would dictate we die. I mean, unless you drive really fast into a wall, but that's a personal choice, not countries going to war, you know. But I'm sitting there on the Last of Us page. Yeah, so that's that. You know, listen to the EPA when it comes to this stuff. If they tell you don't drink the water, don't drink the water. Keep track of what their tests are giving for air quality. Keep track of what their tests are giving for water quality. Probably don't eat any fish out of the out of the rivers and the streams and the lakes that are in the immediate area of the crash. Give it some time, right? Because that's what happens when any of these chemical spills happen. It's give it some time. Let them clean up. The hazmat teams in the United States are really good at cleaning up stuff like this. Let them clean it up and just use your head, right? But it's all going to be fine. And anybody who's more than like probably 20 or 30 miles away from the epicenter of the train crash is totally fine. Unless you're drinking out of the mouth of a river that goes right through East Palestine. Like, don't do that, right? But me here in the Cleveland area, we're in a completely different watershed than East Palestine. So the water is not going to end up in Cleveland's water because the rivers in East Palestine don't go my way. So everybody just relax. It'll be fine. It sucks. It's not good, but it's not that bad, right? Everything will go back to normal and everybody will be fine.